Welcome to the Creative Condition podcast with me, Ben Talon, illustrator and creativity coach, founder of the Creative Condition, artist and writer. I bring 20 years of creative industry experience and a lifelong love of creativity, a fundamental pillar of human happiness, to you through ongoing personal exploration and the shared experiences of others. You'll get a nourishing mix of creative industry professionals and people far and wide using creativity in ways that can take our learning to the next level so we can maximise our unique blend. The show's been supported from day one by Illustration X, a tremendous illustration agency representing a shining global roster of illustrators and animators over at illustrationx.com. The music for the show is by Dirty Freud, who you can listen to now on all good streaming services. And for everything else, for my coaching, resources and inspiration, head to thecreativecondition.com. Today I'm back with the 25th instalment of the Creative Conditions Creativity Diary as I get more into this increasingly warped mind. Thinking about creativity. This is the Creative Condition. How are you doing, guys? I hope you're well. Welcome back. If you're a regular listener, I appreciate you. Hello. If you're new to the Creative Condition, I hope you're going to enjoy what you hear. This is the ongoing Creativity Diary, which is my less refined, less curated succession of thoughts. Sometimes these pieces, which you can find over on the website, thecreativecondition.com, you'll find it under the diary, and you can read all of it. Sometimes I refine them. They get evolved into normal posts, but usually it's quite ragged. It's quite instinctive. I jot these things down as they come to mind. It's an ongoing bank of material for you to read, to enjoy, to maybe learn from, but also to build on, to bring your own thoughts and smash it together and hopefully create something new. That's what I'm thinking with this whole thing. And it does bring insights. It does bring bits of wisdom that gets fed into my coaching practice. So if that is something you're interested in, working with me as a coach, I would love that. There are many ways to do it. There's the pit stop, the one-to-one intensive session that meets you where you are, gets you back on track in the most intensive personal way. Let's have a chat about that. Have a look at thecreativecondition.com/coach for that. And the rest of it, I'm developing a new offer, a storytelling coaching module. 4 sessions for founders and the likes. We're going to tell your story. We're going to work out what your story is. We're going to challenge your existing beliefs. We're going to write the story. It might be in haiku form. It might be poetry. It might be in a fictional prose style. It might be just autobiographical. It might be an interview. That's up to you. You're all individuals. But I'd like to work with you to get your story down on paper as a compass for you moving forward. If you want to go to the extreme and we'll do a book together, that is something I'm doing. I've got a book offer. I would love to do that with you. I believe everyone's got a cracking story in them. It's just a case of framing it, recognizing it, and using it to write the next chapters. Because by the end of this process, I leave you as the author of your own life, not just a bumbling protagonist who's banded from appointment to chaotic scene to briefing to shareholders meeting, and the years go by and you don't know where you're going or why you're doing it anymore. I know a lot of you feel like that from having interviewed you. So let's work together on that. Storytelling coaching or a book. Let's talk about it. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get to it. Big thank you to the founding sponsor of the show, illustrationx.com, where you can find their glorious roster of international illustrators, artists, live muralists, portrait artists, you name it. It's all going on illustrationx.com. Been here since day one. Wouldn't be possible without them. Thank you to those guys. So let's get into it. 20th of November 2011, the Wisdom Curfew. I left Manchester after my second stretch of living in the city in 2021. When I left for London after my first 5-year stint, the only building that touched the clouds was the Hilton Hotel on Deansgate. After loading my car outside M1, a studio space I rented in a former cotton mill on Lower Ormond Street, I set off on a last melancholy stroll up Oxford Road to bookend this chapter. I was leaving for family reasons, with excitement but also a heavy heart. I had 9 of the best years of my life here, including the birth of my children and my brother living in the same city. I'd anticipated something of a reflective walk, but instead I found myself gawping up at what had once been sky above the old BBC HQ. No sky was visible, only the glass and metal of expensive new accommodation to house a new wave of city centre inhabitants. It was all documented in Manktopia, a BBC documentary about the £1 billion property boom. It felt alien to me, and I didn't know how to feel about it. But what I feared, on a deeper level, was that this mirrored the ugly side of gentrification I'd seen play out in Brixton a few years earlier. Many of those vibrant people buzzing around its lively streets I'd been fascinated by in 2008 when first brought my illustration portfolio to London and had been driven out by the middle classes and regeneration. Personally, I preferred the pockets of degeneration because there were more stories to tell and creativity could be smelled in the air along with the weed and the fried chicken. Brixton had enough edge to thrill and a welcoming charm that made me return to the £11 a night hostel many more times in my formative years. I found exactly the same crackle and warmth in Manchester when I moved there in 2009. In 2025, it's hard to ignore the rarity of this balance. It's still fun, and it still feels safe, but the safety is now the dominant breed. The characters who made Manchester what it was have been pushed into stubborn strongholds that feel at risk of terminal refurbishment when leases end and money talks. The lush crops of independent musicians brimming with ambition that I immersed myself in when I co-founded Quenched Music with Dirty Freud in 2010 have been dredged like seagrass, replaced by a hip but orderly crowd. All of the new venues that have spread in every direction look wonderful, very eloquent and varnished with funky design, but I miss the fights, the funk, the fag bins and the madheads who can teach you far more about the human condition and creativity than the more predictable crowd. For that, you have to work harder and head out to the surrounding suburbs because you have to pay handsomely to play in central Manchester today. And while it's still a great place to be, the chronic sameness of our generation has seeped in. I catch the 84 bus on a Thursday afternoon. It goes to Oldham, and it's worth keeping your head out of your smartphone for the duration. The mix of people is absorbing. I'm in a mindful moment, gazing out of the window, when a man of around 30 gets on the bus. I notice the electronic tag on his ankle, wrapped around smart trousers. This tag is the kind issued to those with a criminal conviction, and it comes with a court-ordered curfew that usually requires them to stay indoors outside of designated daytime hours. Legal vampires consigned to the shadows. I can't help but think of how demeaning this is, an official grounding like a teenage wrongdoer. It would be far more interesting and effective to offer up a menu of compulsory dance, drama, sport or art programmes in a way that the wonderful Dance United has proven to be an effective rehabilitation of marginalised people who have wandered from their better path. He's with his mother, and a minute or so later is recognised by a friend who asks if he's heard about Skeggy. Skeggy has been sent down, but I can't quite hear what for, as I take a keen interest in his story. They discuss the electronic tags, how bored they get when they have them, before going on to discuss their video game crime sprees on Grand Theft Auto. I'm not fabricating this, and I have to catch my judgment before it takes fire at them. Characters like this are abundant in my hometown of Keighley, and I know that, despite the stereotypical characterisations of the chronically mischievous, like any pocket of humanity, there are layers. Seconds pass in silence before the friend talks about not having his phone. Something has happened. It's not a choice, but again, I don't catch the reason. He then turns and starts to scan the bus before telling his tagged friend how liberating it has felt not to be scrolling on it all the time. They nod in unison, taking in the majority of passengers who have their necks craned, lost in the digital dystopia of our age, burning all that energy, losing all that lived experience, missing the good stuff. Finally, almost on a breath, he wraps up his realisation by saying that only since not having his phone has he realised how locked in they have everyone. One or two look up and meekly slide their devices away, but the rest present a disturbing illustration of this simple truth. 8th of December 2025, the joy of making art. What kind of creativity is best for you, and are you doing it enough? I haven't been sleeping well. I'm talking about 0 hours nights, screaming levels of panic in the small hours when my heart races and my thoughts are infinite, loud and terrifying. Anxiety brings it on, and my mind just takes the baton and runs with it. I'm doing the work, learning about the mind, talking to the right people for catharsis, but also to learn and grow my way out of a chronic loop of anxious thoughts brought on by overthinking. Progress has been made, and last week, thanks to the unlikely source that was my mother-in-law, I took an important step forward. She's heard from my wife that the night had once again wiped the floor with me, and she was a little worried, this being the fourth shocker in 2 weeks, an undeniable escalation. What are we going to do with you? I think your head is too full. Do you still make that big bright art of yours? I might be talking rubbish, but I know with all your coaching and writing that you've had your hands full. Initially, in a state of sleepless delirium, I replied and assured her I was going to be fine, and I acknowledged the validity of her question about my art, but I didn't have the computing power to think any deeper about the matter. Things improved a little, and despite lingering anxiety, I found a moment to consider her question. My weeks are packed. I never take time to rest, unless we're going away or I have parental duties. As joyous as these two things are, they are also demanding and full throttle. To take a day off to rest, unless ill, has been a luxury beyond my grasp, and that's foolish. I coach my clients about this and provide tools and structures to help them do it. So, after a chat with a close friend and collaborator, Dirty Freud, who suggested I mirror his model of 1 day off a month just to rest or play, I decided to go one better and attempt to protect Fridays for emotional creativity. Emotional creativity is the act of creating for the sake of creating because you want to. I work well under pressure, and with too much time I can fall into procrastination traps. So, my thinking is that if I organise my week well enough and apply enough pressure on myself to have true focus, I'll get 5 days of less organised activity into 4 days, leaving 1 day where it's not about tasks, but about being creative in the purest sense, emotional creativity. So Friday came. In the morning, with brass balls, I dared to roam into town with my wife, drink a fucking brew, and do a spot of Christmas shopping. My anxiety was low and dissipated as we talked about non-work things and the things we're excited about. At lunch, we returned home, and in the afternoon, after a dog walk, I made time to begin creating an artwork from the things I'd found beautiful in Lisbon. I put on some new music after asking for recommendations from friends instead of algorithms, set up my art desk and let rip. It felt amazing and reminded me I just haven't done this. Intellectual creativity tends to be client work, specific and focused acts of making, building, designing and the like, but working to a brief set externally. This alone does not allow our inner artist to play unconditionally, and is what tends to lead too many artists and creators to frustration because of the lack of balance with emotional creativity. The mother-in-law had hit upon something crucial with her simple but profound question. She cut through some of my crap as a great coach, mentor or therapist can. I drew with an abandon I hadn't accessed of my own volition for too long, and as the ink dried on these drawings, inspired by the music, I didn't go to make another brew, but switched on my mic, wrote down some swirling thoughts and recorded them as spoken word and sent them to Dirty Freud for a long discussed but long neglected experimental collaboration using alter egos we created over a decade ago. Much other work has been done on the roots of my overthinking, but my sleep has improved, as has my mental health, and I'm incredibly happy that I was reminded that no matter how much intellectual creativity I carry out in my job, it is essential for me to make like the artist we all have within us. Our sanity depends on it in this world. 8th of December 2025. Rest and creativity. A reminder why rest is essential for optimal creativity and mental health. When it dawned on me that I'd done 18 years without a day off to rest, I could have punched myself in the face. This time it wasn't a day off with the flu. It was 3 days off to avoid what increasingly felt like it might lead to a fucking breakdown. Anxiety, as any regular reader or listener of The Creative Condition will know by now, has been acute this year. Sleepless nights in double figures, and all kinds of jumping through hoops in a mental landscape resembling the upside down of Stranger Things on too many bad days with a racing heart. Only when I felt like I couldn't work, thanks to the paralysing fear, did I acknowledge that I could be burned out. That's when it dawned on me that any time off I'd taken in my freelance career, and I'd been generous enough, was to do something, go somewhere, or care for someone. Never just to stare at a wall and drink a hot beverage, or get into bed and watch wrestling, to play a game, go for a stroll, or visit the cinema. The classic irony is, I give my creativity coaching clients tools and structures, reasons to do this, because I know what happens when you don't rest. But practicing what you preach is a fine art. When I did it, it was a revelation. I could almost see my teenage self saunter in, flop on the bed, and pick up a video game remote. I watched the wrestling, napped, and called some friends who I'd been meaning to catch up with. It wasn't an immediate fix, but it was no coincidence that I felt a renewed optimism and inner peace come the third day, and now I'm trying to make every Friday a slower, more ponderous day, challenging myself to stay organised so I can fit my work into 4 focused days rather than stretching it over 5 semi-efficient ones. On Fridays, I can go for a longer dog walk, start later, finish early, make some art just for me, write a story, or, if I'm really brave, do absolutely nothing and stare at the ceiling. Knowing that this is just as critical a part of creativity's diet as making or idea generation. You can't do either of those things well if you're exhausted and anxious. That much I've learned in a challenging year, and I'm incredibly thankful I did. Cheers, guys. Thank you for listening. I'm undecided, but this might well be the last episode of 2025. I just want to take the time to thank every single one of you who have listened for even a minute. It means the world. It helps me keep this thing going. I'm working with a great marketing agency at the moment to try and expand the reach of the show because I've done this for a decade. I love it, but it's time we reached more ears. I want you to help me. If you could share with a friend if you've enjoyed this, I would massively appreciate it. If you could leave a little review or a rating, that would be awesome too. That really, really helps, in this overcrowded world of podcasting, people to see the shows that I loved, that people like and what they get out of them. So I would massively appreciate that too. And get in touch. I'm always here. Ben@bentalon.com. I've had a bumpy year of it with mental health, but I'm really feeling strong coming out the other side. I've learned a lot about the condition, about my brain, and true to form, I'm now looking at ways of potentially bringing in CBT, NLP and the likes into my coaching practice so I can help others. Who knows, maybe one day I'll be the one sat on the couch doing a full-on therapy. I'm not against that idea. I love helping people, and it was Ryan Lewis, my first coaching client. When I started to work with him, he told me that a year ago he Googled creative therapy. He wanted that. He couldn't find it. When he found this and we did a pilot session together, he said, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. This is creative therapy. And there is a strong degree of that in what we do because it's very personal. We really get into your life, the roots, the things that are holding you back, your origin story and all that stuff. So if you want to jump in and work with me as a coach, then I would love that. I have some bookings available in January and the rest of next year. So give me a shout and go and have a read up, thecreativecondition.com/coach. Big thank you to the founding sponsor of the show, Illustration X. Check out their global range of illustration and animation portfolios now, illustrationx.com. And please do consider investigating, supporting ui.org.ua. That's the Ukrainian Institute, supporting the brave, bold, inspiring Ukrainian creative community in a horrific time of war. Cheers for listening, guys. If I don't speak to you before, have an awesome holiday. Whatever you're up to, whether you celebrate Christmas or not, have a good break. You owe it to yourself to have a rest, as per this episode. Love you all for listening. Let's see you next year. Nice one, guys. Take care.